Now, you said that basically you encourage people to do a trip first because what they see may line up, but then also, I'm assuming what you were starting to say is that it may not. Is that correct?
Yeah, it may not. And, yeah, there's a lot of websites, there's a lot of information out there. The information was created with various different, means. Some people want to sell information, some people want to, like, we sell property.
Yeah.
So, people can present things in a certain way, and then when you come down here, if it doesn't match, it's just not worth it. Even for us as people who are doing real estate here, I don't want to have an angry client who bought something, ahead of time, and then they live here with you angry,
Right.
and it's not good for anybody.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
really better that people come down
No.
because these
No.
small towns are so different. It's worth coming and kind of getting a feel for which one suits you the best in terms of your lifestyle and access to bigger cities, access to things to do. The romantic small fishing village might be fun for a month, but if you're going to live there full time, you want to be close to shopping, that sort of thing. And so,
Yeah, I think that's great advice because having been along the coast of Ecuador and even other countries, I can say that you're spot on that the range and how much the little towns and cities can change and the infrastructure and all that. So you kind of have to really get your feet on the ground and you've got to spend some time there. And I even encourage people to not be ready or so willing to just throw everything away here and go all in down there, but maybe just plan on doing 6 months or a year or something along those lines before you sell everything off back in the States or wherever it is that you currently live, and just kind of test it out because you may even enjoy it for a month or 3 months or what have you, but then a year in you're like, ah, get me out of here. So
yeah, or family or whatnot. I mean, there's lots of reasons to come for sure, and there's lots of reasons not to. And so you gotta. It's a very personal thing, and it's not a blanket prescription that you can say yes, it makes more sense to live in Ecuador. It's not. It's something that it makes more sense for some people by far to live here for tons of different reasons. But for others, you're right. It doesn't. It's not something that fits. Or there's the grass is always greener syndrome, and it seems like the people who are going to a place are the ones who are happy here than the people who are running from a place, I guess you should say.
that's a huge point. Yeah.
And then it also depends on what your goals are. If you're looking for a place to live, then all of that applies. If you're looking for an investment, or you want to diversify, get your money to the U.S. and put it into a piece of land here or something, then it's also a different set of parameters. It just depends on what your goals are. If you want to live here, if you're a snowbird, you want to come down here for a few months of the year, and then rent the rest of the time, or if you're somebody who's gonna sell everything in the States and come down here and live here full time. So
Yeah.
each different person has a different set of parameters and kind of, but for anybody. I would definitely get your passport going if you don't have one yet, and plan a trip to make sure that you kind of you can make an educated decision about anything that you're planning to do here.
Well, and you brought up something else, too, that I wanted to just kind of hit on is that you mentioned about the kind of information you can find online and how it can all look fantastic and all that, or different people may have different agendas with the information that they're supplying, and so. That was one of my big motivators, for creating this project, is that I wanted to be able to give people as balanced of a perspective, the good, the bad, and from actual expats, people that have done it, because I have a lot of information and I know a lot about South America, especially, even, Italy, but nothing like the kind of information that somebody like yourself would be able to provide. And so, and it's different, I think, hearing it straight from your mouth than just reading an article, because, we're going to tend to write a little bit different than we are if we're just speaking like we are, right now having a conversation. So, I think that's a just, backing up to the point that you really need to get your feet on the ground and spend a little bit of time wherever you're considering to go. And just because you've been into one city doesn't really mean that you've got a good perspective of what that country is like. So I think that's
Yeah.
huge. Also,
Yeah, I think that's definitely, and that's a great. You're providing a great resource because it is hard to find information. I mean, a lot of people will just put ads up and put or put a website up and put flowery information and then sell you a report or whatever it is, and it's hard to sift through all that. It's work to sift through all that and find the good stuff. So yeah, I think what you're doing is really a great contribution because it's people with boots on the ground who've gone through a couple things and trying to figure out whether it makes sense for them or not. So
yeah,
that's
that's
awesome.
awesome. Well, I'm still just extremely enamored by the view behind you, and so I just wanted to go ahead and make note that the building that I see over your right shoulder is one of your projects, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're building a project here called Ensenada Pacifico. Right now we have the first phase under construction, and I think we have one resale left here. We don't really have anything for sale left here, but we will be doing other projects in the future. The goal for us right now is to get this first phase of the project done. It's 18 units, get it finished out, and then we'll work on selling the second phase. But we kind of want to have something solid and finished that everyone can see. There are a lot of cases in Ecuador where people start projects and they don't finish them. People had ideas, money exchanged hands, those ideas changed, that type of thing. And so we're trying to set up something that's a little bit more stable and more solid. And so we're working through escrow companies to fund the project. They have auditors that come out to review our project
Oh,
progress,
neat.
and so we're taking it step at a time. Yeah, it's nice. It kind of helps. It adds a third party to it, and helps keep things a little bit more transparent.
Hmm.
And actually, Ecuadorian law, we were already doing that, but Ecuadorian law 2% of the value of a condo to build with. I would have to channel it through an escrow account. And basically, what the escrow does is it makes sure that I don't start anything until we have all the capital in place to finish it. And that's verified by a third party. And so um, we built a number of houses here for individual clients, but once we started thinking about a bigger project, it took about a year to get all the paperwork set up and get everything set up. But at
Wow.
the end of the day, I feel like for everybody's interest, including our own, it's
It's
a
better.
much better way to do things.
So,
Yeah.
how long will a project like that one take?
I mean, this one, we started it almost in mid 2012 or so in terms of coming up with the concept, attracting the first investors, so on and so forth. Now that we're picking up a little bit of speed, the construction here we're at about 6 months now. We did some pretty serious excavation beneath the buildings here, which took about a month and a half of excavation and bringing in fill material that we put in under the foundation. So we're at about 4 months of construction, and we probably have about another 7 to 9 months left. We sign contracts based on 2 years, so we have clients that are flexible on their time frames,
Hmm.
just because Ecuador, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's not, I can't set up a construction schedule and say do it all now and then it just flows. At least for me, yet. We're working as efficiently as we can, but there's still a lot of variables. So we're looking for people who are looking for investments or a place to retire kind of in the future, and they want to get it purchased now as an investment. And so that's who we work with primarily on these projects, and it's gone well. It's hard to have somebody who's like, I'm going to move there in a year and a half. Is it going to be done? And then their whole world's on pause while, let's say there was a shortage of cement, which has happened here, or a shortage of rebar, which has happened here,
Sure.
and we're delayed. I don't want to mess with people's retirement, planning and their years and all that. I'd like it to be something that has a buffer, and so that's what we've done here. It actually, when you do it that way, things tend to go more efficiently. I don't know why. It's just Murphy's Law or whatever. But if I had said this will be done in a year, I would have had 10 more things go wrong. It would have been harder. But
Right.
so far, knock on wood, it's been going pretty smoothly.
Well, and I would like to point out too that it's pretty much, I'd say, more in line too with the kind of mentality and mindset that you should be going to Ecuador for? So when you go, especially if you're going to the coast, it's just going to be a lot more relaxed, laid back, go with the flow kind of mentality, opposed to the what we're accustomed to up here of, okay, I'm expecting it this time, and if it's not, I'm going to be really upset, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's business at the end of the day. And we just, in Ecuador, or at least in my experience here on the coast, you just have to make those times ample enough so that it will fit in there. People tend to try and hype the project. They'll say, oh, we'll have this whole thing done in 6 months. And then they'll be battling all these people, 6 months later when they're only a quarter of the way through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so... we kind of learned that as we got started, and now we're leaving those buffers in there and really making sure that we find the right clients too. That where what we're offering or able to offer matches what they want. We're not trying to force our product into somebody else's dream of being here within 8 months or something like that.
Yeah.
So
That's great. Also, too, you mentioned something that got me thinking. In my experience especially with the coast of Ecuador, well, really just Ecuador in general, 2 to 5 years, if somebody were to invest into a piece of property today, 5 years from now, or even 3 years from now, I'm assuming that piece of property is going to be a lot more expensive, because I mean, I remember we have friends in Bahia, which, my wife had lived there for several years, and I remember it was probably 12 plus years ago. I remember asking them, hey, how much would it cost me? Maybe it was less. Maybe it was more like 10 years ago. But I remember asking them, hey, what would a 3-bedroom condo cost me in Bahia? And I remember they said, well, probably around $35,000, maybe $40,000. And today, when I look online, I mean, I'm seeing prices north of 100,000, probably like 110, 120, 130. Does that sound right?
yeah. And up. It's getting more valuable by the moment there. Now, you have to think about what the condos are. I mean, the traditional condo on the beach in Ecuador has no hot water. It kind of has, they're very small. They're usually multiple bedroom. It'll say it's a 3-bedroom condo, but the bedrooms are tiny, and they're like enough room for a couple, maybe 2 sets of bunk beds crammed in there, and that's your bedroom, or 1 set of bunk beds in there. So the supply is a little bit different than you'd expect. If you say 2-bedroom beachfront condo to somebody in the States, they have a certain image in their mind, and it's not necessarily what was offered here. That being said, yeah, the prices have gone up in just over the past 6 or 7 years since we've been here. They've gone up very dramatically, and it's not just because they started adding hot water. It's because the properties here were significantly undervalued. I mean, significantly undervalued, to where Ecuador went through a financial crisis in the late '90s, early thousands, and people didn't really see it. They saw it as too risky to invest in, and so everything along the beach was undervalued. And so you have something that is worth, let's say $10, and it was on sale for $1, and now it's gone up to $3.
Yep.
But it's still one of those things where if you look at beachfront property and condos and real estate here versus a lot of other places in the world, it's still undervalued, even though prices have doubled. You're paying, instead of $1 for something worth 10, you're paying $2 for something worth 10, but it's still the value is still there.
Yeah.
And so,
well, that's a really interesting point too, because I know I get upset about the idea of having to spend north of 100,000 on a condo when I know what it was going for 10 years ago. And but it was funny because I was just mentioning this to somebody here not too long, a couple days ago actually, and they said, well, $120,000 on the beach is still really cheap. And I was like, I had to think about that. I was like, okay, I guess you're right. And and to your point too, Uruguay went through the same thing because of Argentina and Brazil. Their economy pretty much tanked, and so then Uruguay suffered as well. And I mean, you can still actually find land really cheap over there on the coast. But it is on sale, and like you said, I think risk has a lot to do with it. People see it risky, and I think that one of the things I've learned, more recently, is that when a situation like that happens in a country, it is basically like, hey, this is a blue light special at Kmart, and if you've got the cash, this is a great opportunity for you to go in and get a great investment. I think Greece would be another good example of that. And so if your risk meter is depending on what your risk meter is, if you're okay, if you're comfortable with that, then it might be a good opportunity for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're looking for a place to put capital just to kind of get diversified and that has a good chance of appreciating, you always look for what's undervalued, and places in some sort of distress are undervalued. And so, Ecuador, investment wise, I think has a huge amount of potential still. And there's a lot of other countries and opportunities out there as well. It just depends on what makes sense for you. It's kind of how it works. But no, we've seen prices go up pretty substantially over the past 6 to 8 years, and they're still going up.
Yeah.